Probably this one, if it's 20 minutes, fine. That's the one. There we go.
Stop watching this shit! It's time for history!
That's the one. Yep, that's beautiful. Mwah! I love it.
Fuck!
I love this. Probably already did. Everything is happening. It's beautiful.
Hello, boys and girls.
Embrace Pig.
And people in between, and or neither. My name is Lazerpig.
Love it.
Twice voted YouTube's sexiest pig.
Amazing.
Do not fact check this. Anyway, in the last episode,
I kind of want to fact check it
some
now.
time ago, where I ranted on tanks for an unspecified period of time, we learned about tanks. What tanks are tanks, what tanks are not tanks, that I can't spell, that I don't know how end screens work, and that also that there are a lot of people online who don't know half of what they think they do.
Yeah,
For more information,
accurate.
See this video.
See Twitter.
World War I. So that guy shoots this guy with a gun. And so begins a long, depressing explanation of early 20th century European politics.
But it wasn't
ending in a war where almost as many people die from the fighting conditions as to go.
So the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the catalyst, the spark that set off World War I. But there was history and politics and alliances, the Triple Entente specifically, that were leading up to that. So it's one of those things that, like, I had to have myself fact-checked, and now I fact-check every time. It's like, yes, Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated, yes, that was technically the spark. However, there were already tensions going on. Yeah.
Gunfire. But that is
Unloading shotgun
horrifyingly
cycling
depressing to talk about, and this video is about tanks, and tanks are exciting.
Yep.
We're going to talk about tanks.
One thing
if
that
you want
Star
to
Wars,
experience the true horrors of the First World War, strap a load of paint cans to your
Paint.
back, dig a hole in your backyard, and sit in the rain for 4 years. Or watch They Shall Not Grow Old by Peter Jackson, a film which absolutely does not sponsor this video in any way, shape, or form, but is a highly recommended, amazing documentary using full HD level
it was a
restored
catalyst to
footage,
get things going.
which you can now buy on YouTube, or Amazon, or watch for free on iPlayer, assuming you live in Blighty and have paid your tele license, which I'm legally required to say, and encourage you not to use some
I know
other
about these
method of
television
watching it for
licenses,
free,
yep.
or not paying your non-legally enforceable TV license, which no one pays anyway because the BBC turned out to be harboring more pedophiles than the Catholic Church. Anyway, tanks.
I have no comment
British
on that. I don't
Mark
know
I
enough.
tank rolls off the production line. It's covered in a tarp and flown out to the front lines just in time for the Battle of the Somme.
Did you know that parts of World War II and even the civil rights movement, so in textbooks, right? Like World War II, sections of it, and even then, we also have the civil rights movement, like Martin Luther King, right? You know why they were in black and white? It was to make it seem older than it actually was, to make it seem like it wasn't a modern issue. So that was an interesting piece of history to figure out as far as the mentality of that.
The most famous, bloodiest, and most depressing battle of the war. So for context, the Battle of the Somme...
There's a lot that's going on.
The British have this fantastic, brilliant new idea. What they're going to do is they're going to get all of their artillery and just...
Like we had color a while back.
Shell the German line. Just fire everything they've got, all the artillery at this one
It wasn't even your...
specific spot for over a week. And
color film's been around for a while.
They're going to absolutely devastate everything
it's a form of media
that
control.
they can just get out of the trench and saunter casually across no man's land towards the German lines. There won't be any of them left. They'll all be dead. So that doesn't quite work out according to plan. About a million people die. Scotland itself was...
Yeah, Cambodia has 21 prime example.
And the River Somme runs red with all the blood that's in it.
Yeah.
Welcome to my comedy video. Let's just stick to tanks, okay? Because the tanks that were deployed here were... Okay, you know what? Let me put you in the position of a German field trip.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
You've been under
Sounds
attack
about right,
by
yeah.
artillery for weeks. You haven't seen the sunlight in forever. You've
No.
been drinking schnapps because there's no water, very little food, and almost nowhere dry. You've had no access to your terabyte of tentacle porn back home.
Son
and
of a
it
bitch.
has been years since you've seen a single enemy titty.
God
You
damn it.
can't bring the enemy tits into the trench with you. No. Bonk.
Wait. Hold up. Under communist Americans. Okay, that actually reminds me about a thing, though. Hold up, chat. I promise this is relevant for the stream. I promise this is relevant. Give me a second. I have to find it. If you want the actual copy of this, I will be posting it in memes, but just like I have to send you to Jesus. But no, it's like World War I was not a fun time while I'm finding this.
I will send you to Jesus.
Not a fun time.
I will send you to Jesus.
Nobody
I will
had
send
fun.
you to Jesus.
No, nobody had fun. Nobody had fun at all. Not a fun time. Actually, just not even fucking remotely any sort of enjoyable at all. Alright, I posted it in meme if anyone wants the actual format. But this reminded me, Taiga VTuber posted this. So speaking of on brand for the stream.
But then the bombardment stops, and you emerge, drunkenly hungover from your shelter,
Crawling on your hands and knees as the sunlight hits your eyes for the first time.
Yeah.
in a
Still the
week.
trenches.
And your brain immediately starts screaming because, I mean, if you are lucky enough to still be in your early 20s
Yeah.
or haven't gotten drunk, then you won't know this. But once you get past the age of 25 and you get drunk one night and the sunlight hits your eyes,
It feels like death.
Yeah.
Death has come.
this is life in your 30s. This is what you young fucks have to look forward to. Sometimes I get the hangover while I'm still drunk. I'm at the party on my third bottle of vodka, feeling only a little tipsy, but forgetting that this is just my brain luring me into a false sense of security. And just as someone is giving me eyes from across the room and the slow dance music starts,
The demons come out and they claw at you. You have fallen for their trap, and this would lead only to your drunken demise.
you are now rolling on the floor in pain and agony,
Drooling and shivering, realizing that this was a horrible mistake. And you just want to be home with your blanket and your video games.
Welcome to your 30s, bitch. It's all downhill from here. Anyway, back to war.
Oh my God, but that
you emerge
wood
from your
rots.
bunker, etc., so on and so forth. And for the first 10 minutes,
Unkillable soldier.
nothing
Yeah,
happens.
there are
Eerie
exceptions.
Stillness to the world.
Trench
and
foot, yep.
then, through the mist, you hear the grunts and moans of a 6-cylinder diesel bus engine as
Bus.
towards you,
Bussy?
rattling and clanking,
Bussin'.
comes the most ridiculous
Talk.
thing you have ever seen in your life. And then it starts shooting at you.
Amazing.
Historians have a divided opinion on what the Germans were feeling at this moment. Some historians...
Wait, guys, why is there an Among Us in the picture? Why is there an Among Us here? I'm not the only one seeing this, right? I'm not the only one seeing the imposter in the painting. I can't ever unsee it now.
The British ones describe the Germans as fleeing in terror, while other historians, German ones, describe them as having an attitude of almost perplexement as to what the fuck
What the fuck is this?
What is this going on? I don't know. Hans, do you know what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Weeks in that bunker, we emerged and there were boxes moving towards us. This
I
is
will send you
exciting.
to Jesus.
Regardless if it was fear or perplexement, they eventually realized that tanks are big and slow and very stupid and can be very easily taken out by an artillery shot. And
Oh my God.
the Germans have a lot of those.
Yeah, they do.
And if one gets stuck, the British will fire their artillery at it because they don't want these things being captured by
Yeah,
the Germans.
that's fair.
So being a tanker
Honk.
in those early days,
Jesus.
pretty shit affair. Not only is every artillery piece on the German line now firing at you, your own artillery is aiming at you and will shoot you if you fail, and you have to wear this dumb mask to stop bits of hot metal sticking into your face.
So what I'm hearing is that the German artillery teams are like, I want every gun we have to fire on that box.
On the tank he was breaking down. Oh, and your only line of communication with the outside world is a bird.
I hate this.
This bird.
Bird.
Pigeon.
I love him.
Yes, wireless
Beautiful.
communication was a thing back then, and ciphers for that kind of system were incredibly advanced. I mean, they even had their own systems that could detect if they were being intercepted. And
Bird
there's
up.
this whole submarine cyber war between Britain and France as they try to tap into each other's undersea telegraph cables. I'll do a video on that someday probably, because nobody believes me that actually happened, but it did, trust me. Anyway, now, that is not to say that
Tiny
no
Tonk.
tank had wireless communications. They did. Here's
Fire
the problem.
everything.
I described the hellscape of no man's land.
Hans, you see how it's
Mud that's like glue, and there's bits of building and
Yeah, fuck the
bodies
trenches.
and metal and razor wire everywhere. It's a
Oh,
horrible
razor wire is
nightmare land,
awful.
And getting a signal through that on a 1910s radio set, not an easy task. Takes a bit of effort. So the Pigeon's a bit more reliable. Now, the UK had about 150 Mark 1s, but they did not have enough guns for them all. The big
French
600
tank.
cannons. So it was decided
Won't be dry
to
for
take
long.
half the tanks and fit just machine guns to them. Therefore,
Oh,
separating
absolutely. Yep,
them
trench
into the
foot's a
male
thing.
and female tank class accordingly. Male tanks with a big cannon, because, you know, big gun for a big man.
Oh.
And machine guns for the female, because as we all know,
Gross.
under the
Sorry.
skirt of every woman are 2 3.5-inch Hotchkiss machine guns, ready to unleash a molten steam of hot
Actual fact, actually.
lead to spray down their
Allegedly.
enemies. I'm assuming. I'm gay. I've never seen a vagina. I believe they look like this. There were also tanks that had a cannon on one side and machine
my
guns on
God.
the other, and they were known
Oh my
as
God.
hermaphrodites. Now,
Oh.
some female tanks were ranked into specialities, some of those being wireless communication. It was their job to report back to HQ what was going on. But to do that, the tank has to stop completely and erect a giant scaffold, which is
Amazing.
not particularly practical when you're being shot. The tank's initial deployment is not exactly the great success
I love
everyone
this.
hoped it was. There were some local successes in the Somme, and a little few tactical gains are made at a huge cost of life. Field Marshal Haig becomes known for his
with the
tactics,
air-
wave after wave of his own men at the enemy.
Built
the ideology
different.
that will personify the First World War, and he will go down in history by his nickname, the Butcher of the
Just
Somme.
put some thermite on the
Now,
engine block.
tanks are regarded by some to be a bit of a lame duck, and expensive.
Now, I have to cite this. I have to have someone cite this as far as... So, like, when U.S. soldiers were pulling out of Afghanistan, right? One thing that was said, because they couldn't, say, take all the Humvees and the vehicles, one thing that was cited that could help is, say, for example, if you have a Humvee, if you have a tank or whatever, to prevent it from falling and being captured by enemies, you could put a brick of thermite on the console, on the engine block, etc., and it will it will melt through it and therefore make it inoperable. At least that's as far as a solution I did hear. As far as if anyone has any credence to that, any citations onto that, you know, I'd be curious to know if that's valid or not.
Flop, but they're not done yet.
Oh, it was one
You
with
see, the
thermite,
army
yeah.
starts to see the potential of them and considers their failures to being
Before-
having deployed into
I think
fewer
it was,
number.
yeah.
So they demand better tanks and more of them.
Better
Now,
tank.
When people think of First World War British tanks, the one they will likely picture is the Mark IV.
Okay, thank you.
Which was the most common.
Big.
Mark IIs, Mark IIIs, very visually similar to
Yo.
Mark Is as the
Where's the hot dog, though? Kiwi, you know what I'm talking about, right? The Badger hot dog tank, the long one. Where's that one?
only incorporated a small number of improvements that were mostly kept for
Stuff in
training
the field
purposes.
tanks. Okay,
A few Mark IIs were sent to the front. They were used in Iraz.
Foster's
By this time,
grenades,
the Germans
what?
had developed armor-piercing rounds, and the tanks became
Advanced
death
placement
traps.
rounds.
The Mark IIIs incorporated many improvements over the Mark Is and were the first to be fitted with the Lewis gun. This was a
Oh.
totally new concept for a machine gun. A light machine gun,
Oh.
originally developed in America, but the Americans weren't interested in
Cognitive.
what the
That's
hell
legit.
is this? I don't, your light machine gun? I don't want your goddamn commie light gun. I want my big, beefy, American-made melee gun. Get the hell off my
Actually,
property,
America.
boy. So the British purchased
The
it and
Tog,
finished the
okay.
design themselves. It's got a drum on
my
top, and it makes this kind of weird bone-rattling sound when it fires.
Talk to ya. It's
It
absolutely
was built for
toggers,
mobile
chat.
warfare, which may surprise a lot of people that such a thing was a concept in World War One. I've gone on about that, don't worry about it. But just to put it in brief, a typical machine gun of World War One weighs about 100 pounds. That is on the lightest scale.
fuck is a
Bigger
kilometer?
German ones could be about twice that.
Wow.
Lewis gun, 28 pounds.
Yeah, it's
a light
efficient.
machine gun. You can also carry it by yourself and fire it without ripping your arms off.
The
So,
shot.
good
What?
thing.
Is that French?
Anyway, Tank Mark IV hits the shelf and shoppers are going mad for them. After this, the remaining Mark Is get regulated to
yeah.
ammunition carriers or secondary duties like this one, acting as a mobile airship tether for some reason.
Both French?
Some
Wow.
other Mark Is get converted into these gun carriages or SPGs, that's self-propelled guns as we know them today, which is the oddly novel idea of moving the artillery with the infantry. So they
Amazing.
don't do something stupid like wander out of range. It also means you can have all the gun crew and the ammunition come with you, which saved the lives of a lot of young boys in the war who typically died trying to bring large amounts of ammunition to the front for the artillery guns. Because
An
if
AK
you're
man
a
didn't stop curving
sniper
until I hit that.
and
Wow.
you see
Go,
someone
wait.
carrying
Nutty.
a very large,
I love
heavy
it.
explosive, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Sorry, I know, depressing.
Hit the explosive.
Let's stick to the exciting stuff. I'm sorry. Okay, here's ammunition being carried to the front by a train, as well as troops. Just look at the sheer look of terror on that man's face. Oh boy. Anyway, what was I saying? Come on, quickly, I can't remember. Tanks, right, okay. So the Mark IV is more heavily armored, utterly nullifying German armor-piercing ammunition. Yeah, Virabus, not everything Germany makes is awesome and war-winning. You hear me say this a lot. I mean, Mark IV also shortens the barrels of the main 6-pounder gun so they can fit into things like streets and the
So him making the leaf on the tank reminded me that there are in fact pictures of like inside tanks, like active U.S. military service tanks that are just plastered with like anime and waifu stickers and decals and shit. Like military is just built different.
doors of the factory they were made in. Mark IVs were more common, and you'll see examples and pictures of them everywhere in museums. They're most famous for being involved in the world's first tank versus tank battle, which was at the Second Battle
Some
of
tonk on tonk.
Bretagne. I need to do my French accent. Villers Bretagne.
Bretagne makes sense, yeah.
And now I'm going to play some footage from a documentary which shows a recreation of this famous tank battle. A lot of money went into the production of its graphics, and I think you'll agree with me in saying how incredible and lifelike they are. So this takes place during the famous 40-mile push by the Germans that puts them in sight of
I have to take
Paris.
pictures
It was
of them real quick.
one of the very few times that a German tank was operational. In this case, an A7V, which I'll maybe talk about.
Box!
in the video. It trundles out of the fog towards a position where 3 British tanks are sitting
box!
somewhat perplexed or perhaps terrified, depending on your nationality, of what it was they were looking at. Only one of the British tanks had big guns, so it fired first. But it manages to fire off a bunch of rounds at the 2 supporting British tanks, while the main British tank, the male, tries to get in a bit closer. The 2 spot each other, shoot at each other for a bit, and
I have
then
not
German
seen the
tank
kettle
retreats.
tank, no.
And that's about as exciting as it gets.
You carved
The
it.
Mark IV
Really?
also
I haven't
used the
seen
Battle
this.
of Cambria,
Anthony Sullivan,
which is the
send that
first
to the
major
server.
battle where tanks were deployed en masse. Finally. It was
Wow.
also one of the first battles to use combined arms warfare, something frequently mislabeled as blitzkrieg by people who should know better, and credited to the Germans 30 years later. So people
But aren't they completely separate concepts? Like Blitzkrieg is effectively just using all out unstoppable aggression to the point that they can't mount any sort of resistance. Like combined arms just sounds like you're using multiple facets or multiple equipment and units and stuff. That's lightning strike is what it is. Yeah. In fact, from my understanding, Desert Storm was supposed to take points from the Blitzkriegs in World War II because you can make swift, decisive action wins conflicts. I don't know. That's a little outside of my prerogative. I'm not a history
were often
professor.
surprised to know, yes, it was the Germans start developing better anti-tank
Look at
weapons,
those
leading
helmets,
to the
jeez.
Mauser tank Gewehr.
Go where?
That thing, which is the first true
Ha! Kiwi, it's not just me that said Gewer.
anti-tank rifle. They also had some other anti-tank weapons around at the time.
Gewehr, thank you.
The bullet mentioned earlier, which was a high-velocity armor-piercing bullet that could be fired from a standard rifle and was typically issued to snipers.
Kiwi's
Hated
having
it
an
because it had
aneurysm
a
as we
tendency
speak.
to explode in the rifle. which was a bit of a problem if you were the guy
Very-
holding.
perfect.
the
Thank you.
rifle
Translation
at the time.
relevant.
I do have something that needs clarifying here.
Uh-huh.
Earlier, I mentioned the Germans were using some sort of armor-piercing rounds. A lot of people, thanks to Wikipedia, seem to be under the belief that this was machine gun bullets. This is because, if you'll pardon the deviation while I talk about pew-pew shells for a moment, the German 13.2mm Tough is often confused for the 50 cal BMG round, which was under development at the same time and was partially influenced by the German design. They are, however,
You could
utterly
still fire
different
these,
bullets.
right?
There is no evidence to suggest the Germans ever fired the 13.2mm.
Because I know
from
ammunition
machine
after a
guns.
certain period of time
That
gets a little
bullet was
sussy.
only ever used in anti-tank rifles, which were one-shot
I can't remember
bolties.
if it was very hard to pronounce.
Ah,
Interesting.
yes, post-production Lazerpig here.
Aye.
Look, that last thing I said is going to get a lot of people riled up in the comments, so let me just clarify my clarification over the tunes of my very squeaky chair here. So the Germans did build a machine gun that was capable of chambering the 13.2mm anti-tank round. It was called the MG-18 Tank und Fliege. However, it was produced in very limited numbers, never saw frontline combat, never saw action. Yeah. The
Yeah.
idea potentially comes from the Second World War,
Those
where
calibers are still
Panzer
produced
1s
mainly
and
for
2s fired
shooting.
modified
I've been told to
cables from
find
their
7mm Mauser
machine
for a
guns.
friend of mine.
So anyway, back to
I can never
tanks.
find a shop
so
with
the
it,
Mark
though.
V now comes along. This was supposed to
Still be
be a
used,
total
okay,
redesign
fair.
of the tank, incorporating a number of new
Tree, what
systems, but
tree?
Mark IV suck, and we need 1 million new tanks by Christmas, so scrap that, get an old tank, and just make it better. That became the Mark V, and this is where British
Modern
tanks
arms.
sort of peaked during World War I.
Yeah,
And
I don't even-
the Mark
I
V
can't even
is
find
more
7
famed for its
millimeter.
use after World War I. Numerous Mark Vs were used in the Allied intervention of the Russian Civil War. A lot were captured and retained by the various countries, and most still have them in various
Brian
conditions.
Crouch is like, oh, fair enough.
And in World War II, one was stolen by the Home Guard, brought back into working order, and was used to defend the British coast against invasion.
Huh.
If or not it did anything other than ferrying troops to the pub and back is unknown, but I suspect its use against modern armor of that period, even if it is the very shitty early German tanks, would have been
What
like
is that?
trying
Why
to
does it have
stop a modern
wheels?
tank
Oh,
with
wait, those
rude
are tread there.
gestures.
Okay.
I mean, you'll hurt the driver's feelings, but he's not going to stop. 2 Mark Vs, or possibly Mark IVs, were also found after the Battle of Berlin by the Russians, apparently having been reactivated and stolen from a museum. This was actually very common in the Battle of Berlin. A lot of museum pieces were reactivated and thrown against the Russians. I've seen pictures of German soldiers with old First World War rifles. I've seen them with black powder rifles, crossbows, you name it. The Mark V
Legend.
was also key to kickstarting the tank development program of several other countries, most notably America, who would go on to develop several of their own versions and then claim they invented it.
Oh, interesting.
So Britain would make a number of other tanks, of which only maybe 3 would really leave the prototype stage, and I'll talk about those maybe some other time, because honestly, they're not particularly worth mentioning, unless it's this one, which is the flying elephant, which can't fly, and nor is an elephant. but
Caterpillar.
It is kind of like the first kind of idea of building like a super heavy tank, so it's kind of interesting in that regard, but
I made this.
Hi, post-production Lazerpig here again. Yes, I'm aware of the K-Wagon. Again, never built. Shut up. And the other tank Britain would produce in significant numbers was the Whippet, which was an
Perfect.
idea for a tank, but a bit lighter, so it could move a bit faster than the heavier, slower models. It didn't really see much action until 1918, and it had a very significant problem, and that problem was that the exhaust pointed forwards. So when the tank moved at full speed, the exhaust would blow back into the cab, blinding and choking the crew. In spite of this, the Whippet has something of a fan base, so I couldn't not mention it. There was also the Liberty. Officially labeled the Tank Mark VII, when America entered the war, Britain floated the idea to the US Congress of developing their latest
hot
tank
take.
prototype. That was the Mark VI, which was what the Mark V was originally supposed to be in America instead of Britain or France, allowing it to divert its resources to
Liberty.
shipbuilding. Congress was interested in the idea, but what they were not interested in was British designs. They
Oh.
wanted their own American design.
America!
They had absolutely no idea what a tank was, so they proposed a joint design program in which they proposed that Britain would design a tank, and then they would claim that they designed it. That tank was the Mark VI, later known as the International, and then the Liberty.
I made
Its
this.
history is a pebble dash of problems as the two sides try to come to an agreement, but... and
That is a
then
mood.
finally, Australia. They did a tank. Well, I mean, they didn't build one, but Lancelot D. Mole wrote a very strong design for a tank that was vastly superior to anything the British had been thinking of at the time. But he was Australian, so the Brits never took him seriously. Though in 1919 he was awarded 987 Great British Pounds as a show of thanks for trying. Adjusted for inflation, that's about £51,000, which is not bad. I mean, a man could buy a lot of turnips for that. And you could just replant those turnips. Turnips make more turnips, and before you know it, infinite turnips. Anyway, I'm going into a tunnel now. No, wait, it's a bar. I lied.
No, it's a bar.
Tequila time for Lazerpig. Goodbye.
It's tequila time.
It's raining man. Hallelujah, it's raining man. Hey man, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna let myself get.
I'm never gonna play D2 tonight at this rate.
Man, hallelujah, it's raining man.
More importantly, proof.
Better fucks better subscribe, by the way.
God, that shit was amazing. Thank you, Lazerpig, for another absolute fucking banger.